Welcome to West Virginia Sports Connection. We are coming to you from Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Charleston, West Virginia. I'm joined by my co-host, three-time All-Pro Carl Lee, and a friend I've known, Dave, maybe 30 years. About Dave Weekley. I probably shouldn't say how many years we've known each other.
That's all right. It's all good, Tracy.
I'm glad you made it down, Dave. Right now you're the hotline host on Metro News, and you've done 8 million different things in television and radio. I remember the first internship I ever did. I walked in WCHS, and we had met before that.
Right.
You're like, what are you doing there? I said, I'm interning. So I don't even know if you remember that or not, but that's been a while ago. And first of all, thanks for coming down, man. I'm so happy you decided to come down.
Well, I agreed to do the show, and then I found out Carl was on the show, and it was too late to pull out, so I figured I had to go on through with it.
Yeah, he has to suffer with me on Monday, so.
Well, I'm glad it didn't put you out too much.
No, it's all good.
What a great time for you to come aboard. I mean, where else can we go besides West Virginia football right now? I mean, it's crazy right now. You had all these reports before the bowl game and before, Oklahoma that there was interest in Holgerson from Houston. Then there's these rumors, and then it kind of dies down, right? You don't hear anything about it. Then Will Greer says he's not going to play in the bowl game, and then Jennings follows and Hurt, whatever you want to call it. And then all of a sudden you start hearing it heat up again. The second they lost that bowl game, it's like, bam, he's with Houston. Did you know this stuff was coming down the pipe? I mean, the word was already out there, but it kind of seemed like maybe he backed off the Houston job.
Well, I think there was a little bit of smoke happening when there were rumors that Holgerson was talking to Texas Tech. And then the unofficial word was that Kirby Hocutt, who was the athletic director at Texas Tech, was kind of centering in on another candidate and really didn't want to talk to Dana Holgerson about that position. There's always been a threat that Holgerson would go back to Texas. And, he's kept one foot in Houston virtually this entire time. He has a home there. I mean, he still does radio, or has been doing radio one day a week back to Houston ever since he got to West Virginia. So, no, I'm not really surprised. And there had been talk all year long about a potential contract extension for Dana Holgerson and where both sides were on that. And, when push came to shove, he saw an opportunity to go back home, and he did it.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how much of the end of the season this year have an impact on athletic director, president, all the upper management do we want to get into a contract extension with him? Could they offer him more after coming off of a season that seemed potentially they had the best players that they've had in a while to move forward, and they didn't? How did that play on their side?
Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, West Virginia started the year 8-1. And at the time, when you're 8-1, you're thinking, wow, the worst case scenario is they could get to the Big 12 championship game. I mean, if they had won either the Oklahoma game or that game at Oklahoma State, the worst case scenario is if they had lost the Big 12 championship game, they would have played in the Sugar Bowl last night. Here's the other thing, too. I mean, Shane Lyons is the athletic director at West Virginia. He's a Type A personality. He didn't hire Dana Holgerson. Yeah. He inherited him. So you got a situation where every AD, and Carl, you can relate to this, every AD wants to put his own stamp on the program. Plus, you take Greer out, you take Kajust out, you take Jennings out, you take David Long out. Next year looks like maybe it's not going to be that great of a season. And when I say not a great season, I mean less than 6 wins. We saw what West Virginia's lineup for next year is basically going to be like in that bowl game. Yeah. I think they can probably win 6 or 7 games. But before you commit to a contract extension to Dana Holgerson, you're thinking, well, you're obligated to this guy for 1 more year, $3.75 million. Do you really want to extend him? And they've been going back and forth between Holgerson's agent and West Virginia. And then, of course, you had this offer from Houston, and he just decided to say, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go back home.
I found it interesting because when we were doing a show with Kevin Kinder, they were 8-1, and we talked about the possibilities. Okay, if they win, is there an outside shot at the playoffs? I think realistically at that time there was a slim chance. I mean, if they would have ran the table and won the Big 12, they were essentially sitting in the same spot Oklahoma was, and they got in. Well, obviously, they lost to Oklahoma State. Huge letdown, and all of a sudden you saw everything over social media about Holgerson. Fire Holgerson, blah, blah, blah. And right now the guy's 8-2, right? And then they go to Oklahoma, and what a game that was.
Fabulous game.
I mean, it was a fantastic game. You take away just one of those fumble returns, they win that game. So now he's 8-3. So the worst possible scenario, and we were discussing that, and Kevin said, well, what if they lose both of them? Because I didn't even entertain the thought they would lose both of them, even though we knew it could happen. I thought they're going to win at least one of those games, and they're going to be in the Big 12 championship at the very least. He said, but if that doesn't happen, does Will Greer play? Well, Will Greer decided not to play because they didn't win those. And then you've got all these people hating on Will Greer, on Dana Holgerson. And, you know, Carl and I had talked about when he first heard of people not playing in the game, with Leonard Fournette and all that in their bowl game, he was like, huh? And then he came around and he kind of convinced me that, you know what, it's a business decision. It's a business decision for that kid, and this is a business decision for Dana Holgerson, and a business decision for WVU not to get into a bidding war. I mean, do you think, was there even a shot at a bidding war with him? And should they have been in one?
I don't know. I think only Shane Lyons and Gordon Gee can answer that. We do know this, that the money that Holgerson is getting at the University of Houston is guaranteed, and he is getting a slight bump in pay from what he got at West Virginia this particular year. There's other things that go into the mix as well. How much money is he going to get for his assistant coaches? Which coaches are going to follow him? What coaches will be attracted to Houston? How many games can he win at Houston? A bidding war? I don't know. I know this. I think that Holgerson's agent probably knew Houston's offer, and he he's trying to do the best for his client. So he basically went to West Virginia and said, look, this is what we have. Can you top it? And for whatever reason, they decided to pass on it.
We talked on Monday, we talked a little bit about, and I had suggested that I've never seen Dana connected into West Virginia as a buy-in to West Virginia. I feel like that was a move that he was hoping was going to launch him upward. I don't think that happened, not taking anything from Houston, but I think after that, I think this was more of a decision for money, more so than anything else. And I'm not sure if he brings anybody with him. I'm not sure what his connections are with the whole coaching staff as a whole. So I'm not sure. So what's your take on the possibility of him? Is he going to reunite in Houston and then rejuvenate himself, go forward? And or is he really that connected into the coaches at West Virginia now to take them with him?
Well, there's a couple of things done.
Dave, I'll tell you what, let's save that answer for we've got to take a commercial break real quick. We'll come right back to that. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
You can do and you can say anything you want. Live your life and I'll live mine any way I want. You can have and you can take anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want. Anything you want, and I want. You can do and you can say anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want.
This isn't just a beer. It's a lager. A medium-bodied, amber-colored, one-of-a-kind beer. Made from those bold enough to brew it, for those bold enough to drink it. Tap into your inner eagle. Yingling Traditional Lager. Spread your wings.
It's football season again, and Tony the Tailor has the perfect sportswear, outerwear, and footwear. Johnny O quarter zips and sports shirts, Bill's khakis, and boots from Allen Edmonds are what the smart people are wearing this season for game time and play time. We have a great selection in our downtown Charleston store, or shop at our new downtown Huntington location. Can't make it in? Shop online at bestmastertailor.com. Tony the Tailor, West Virginia's finest men's store.
West Virginia Sports Connection is brought to you by Subway, Development of West Virginia, Greg Hammond. With promotional consideration from Sprague's Distributing Company, Yingling Golden Pilsner, Hendrickson, and Long. The Riggs Corporation, Commercial Real Estate. Paul M. Corey, CPA.
Welcome back to West Virginia Sports Connection. I'm joined with my co-host Carl and Dave Weekley from Hotline host for Metro News. Moving out, I so rudely cut you off when you were about to answer this great question Carl just asked you about, essentially boiling it down to, should he take coaches with him? Did I get that right, Carl?
Or is he going to is he connected enough to the coaching staff to take them with him? And or is this a move to kind of rejuvenate himself, and will he to eventually get to a bigger job? Because I think that was his goal when he came to West Virginia. He thought that was going to be a springboard. It did not happen. He goes back to Houston. Now does he retry that?
Well, as far as assistant coaches following him to the University of Houston, I think there's a couple of things you got to unpack there. First of all, we don't know how much money he's going to have for assistant coaches, but you would assume that he'll have the same amount of money that he had at West Virginia, right? But which ones will want to follow him? Which ones will want to go to the University of Houston? As to which ones it will be, I don't have any insight into that. But I think it's probably possible that one, maybe two, could go with him to Houston. The other thing that you mentioned before the break that I thought was interesting was you talked about how Holgerson never really connected with the West Virginia fan base. I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. First of all, take a look at the way he got the job. I mean, when he was the coach in waiting with Bill Stewart, okay, that fractured the fan base. It really did. I mean, Bill Stewart, for all of his shortcomings as a coach, and if you take a look back, I mean, the worst he ever had was a 9-3 season. He had 3 9-win seasons.
And a likable guy.
And a very likable guy and a West Virginia guy. So Holgerson was sort of seen as the villain there. That may not be fair, but I think that's the way he was portrayed. That fractured the fan base. Another thing that he got better at while he was the coach was with PR. I mean, just in terms of meeting fans, press conferences every week. If you remember at the beginning, he was very bad at that. I mean, he's basically seen as an offensive savant. I mean, he didn't come in there as a PR specialist. Now, he did get better at that as time went on. Another thing, and we were talking about this on the radio show today, is when West Virginia was in the Big East, the fan base spent a lot of time discussing how, hey, the Big East is a legitimate league, there are good teams in it. Well, you had a situation where when Holgerson got the job, one of the first things he said was, well, we're going to have to upgrade this program to compete in the Big 12. We're going to have to be better than a Big East program. That kind of alienated a lot of the players who played in that Big East portion of West Virginia history and the fan base as well. And the other thing was, when you take a look at his overall record is okay. I mean, if you take a look at the history of West Virginia football, they're going to win between 7 and 8 games every year. That's sort of what they normally do. He was 33-30 in the Big 12. It wasn't so much the games he lost, but it had a lot to do with the way he lost them. There were a lot of lopsided losses. There were a lot of losses in big games. Look at this year, they lost their last 3 games. Last year, they lost their last 3 games. So, when you're ending the season on a losing streak and you lose those bowl games, and he had a sub 500 in bowl games, the natives get restless.
I think they were very restless at this point. I mean, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and flipping over to, I know that I'm a little biased here, but you look over at Doc Holliday, and you look at his bowl record. In spite of what happens in the year, he loses the game, and there's a little bit of mumbling, but then at the end of this year, he's in a bowl game, he wins it, and everybody's happy. So I agree with you 100% that I think, that end of the season and bowl games hurt him more than probably anything. And again, I was in Minnesota when we had a very, very well-known defensive coordinator come in and showed us a film clip of a team that he used to coach, and it set like everybody off. Every defensive player in the room, like after that meeting was over, it was like everybody was like, well, why are we looking at them? We're not them. So that's a really valid point. You don't like that whole kind of comparison of talking about what other places did.
I just think Holgerson has gotten banged on for a long time. I mean, he really has. And I think what you said is he kind of alienated people, but I think he grew into the position. He'd never been a head coach at this level before. I don't know at any level before that. And he was rough, man. He was rough around the edges, like you said, but he grew into it. I
agree. I agree. He did mature. And he became a better game manager by the end.
But does WVU fans have the ability to wait on you as a coach to grow into that job?
I think they do. Here's the thing. Depending on who the next coach is, I think that there's a really good chance that the fan base gets galvanized behind them. Because there's no more Bill Stewart faction. There have been people who have been grumbling about Dana Holgerson virtually from day one.
Yes, I agree.
Okay? Now you basically know next season there's no Greer. Look at what's happened in the last couple of days. Lincoln Riley gets a big contract extension. He's not going to the NFL, so Oklahoma's not going away. Texas physically beat up Georgia last night in the Sugar Bowl.
Boy, did they.
There's a good chance that they're going to be in the top 10 next year. So the top 10 of the Big 12 for the next couple of years looks like it's going to be set. I think West Virginia is going to be able to rise to the middle of the Big 12. And like I say, people are going to boo-hoo next year's team. They're going to have to go out and get themselves a grad transfer quarterback. But if they do, I think they're going to win 6 or 7 games. And I think the next coach is going to get time. I just kind of feel like Holgerson got off on the wrong foot because the perception was that they sort of pushed Bill Stewart out of the way to get him in there.
I think they did. I mean, I never agreed with the way that went out. When you hire a guy and say he's the coach in waiting, well, what's the current coach supposed to do? I mean, I thought that was nuts.
Well, remember at the time, and if you go back 10 years, the whole concept of the coach in waiting, it was basically created for Jimbo Fisher, okay? I mean, when you could see Bobby Bowden was slowing down and Florida State did not want to lose Jimbo Fisher, so they created this whole coach in waiting situation. And then there were other schools that emulated it, including West Virginia. And for the majority of the schools that tried to do it, it really didn't work, except for Florida State. In that case, it did work.
Well, I think it's hard. If I'm the head football coach and and I've got a year, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You're the guy behind me, how do you not critique some of the things that I'm doing and think like you need to change it? And how am I going to sit there and say, well, why is Dave critiquing me?
Well, I'll give you another one. What happens when you're in a meeting and the head coach is saying one thing and you're looking over at the coach in waiting knowing that he's going to be your boss next year? I mean,
yeah, that's tough. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's a great term. I mean, I think it's a great term, but I don't think the waiting it can works on either side of that.
And now it doesn't. Nobody does it anymore.
No.
I mean, I think he was just set up for failure from the beginning. And
you know what? Here's the thing. Since he's gone, now there's a lot of piling on. But I mean, if you really look at the guy's record, it's really not that bad.
It's good.
I mean, he's not. Listen. This is my take on Dana Holgerson. He's not a bad coach. He's not a great coach. He's a coach that I think's good. I think he could be really good in his system in the right situation. I just don't think this was the right situation with the whole way it started out. And when you brought that up, I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right.
But here's the thing. Think about this too. I mean, life, like football, is a game of inches. Mm-hmm. I mean, you take that T.J. Simmons penalty away from West Virginia in the Oklahoma game, they probably win that game. Or they got a 17-point halftime lead at Oklahoma State against a very average Cowboy team this year. They win one of those two games, chances are they're at worst playing in the Sugar Bowl, and Holgerson has his contract extended.
They're loving Holgerson. With that thought, we're going to take another commercial break. Hey, don't forget you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on our website at WVSportsConnection.com, and on Apple iTunes. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You can do and you can say anything you want. Live your life and I'll live mine any way I want. You can have and you can take anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want. Anything you want. And I want. You can do and you can say anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want.
This isn't just a beer. It's a lager. A medium-bodied, amber-colored, one-of-a-kind beer. Made from those bold enough to brew it, for those bold enough to drink it. Tap into your inner eagle. Yingling Traditional Lager. Spread your wings.
It's football season again, and Tony the Tailor has the perfect sportswear, outerwear, and footwear. Johnny O quarter zips and sport shirts, Bill's khakis, and boots from Allen Edmonds are what the smart people are wearing this season for game time and play time. We have a great selection in our downtown Charleston store, or shop at our new downtown Huntington location. Can't make it in? Shop online at bestmastertailor.com. Tony the Tailor, West Virginia's finest men's store.
West Virginia Sports Connection is brought to you by Subway, Development of West Virginia, Greg Hammond. With promotional consideration from Spriggs Distributing Company, Yingling Golden Pilsner, Hendrickson and Long, The Riggs Corporation, Commercial Real Estate, Paul M. Corey, CPA.
Welcome back to West Virginia Sports Connection. We are coming to you from Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Charleston, West Virginia. We're talking with Dave Weekley, the hotline host of Metro News, and always Carl. Again, I keep cutting you off, man, with these breaks every time.
That's all right.
Carl, hold that thought real quick.
Well,
what were you saying?
To the divide on Dana Holgerson, one of the things that I can go back when he first came in, Dave, was like he was like the quarterback wizard, right? Everybody believed that it didn't matter if whatever the quarterback looked like, he could turn him into this star. And then when that doesn't happen, he never really seemed to back off of like, well, hey guys, I'm not really the quarterback whisperer, right? I'm not really that guy. I'm just I just go out, I do the best I can. And I think the expectations of who he was supposed to be offensively, I think that created a divide. Not that he did not have some great offensive performances, but I think just offense is not enough to win football games at that level. What's your take to that?
Well, you know this. I mean, I'm sure Bob Pruitt eventually is going to be a guest on this show, and he used to tell great stories about Steve Spurrier when he was running Steve Spurrier's defense in Florida, that he didn't even want to be in the meetings. Defense, that's not his thing. The defensive coordinator can handle all that, and he can take all the heat as well. I kind of feel the same way with Holgerson. He did his best in terms of hiring defensive coaches, Tony Gibson, for example, but defense, that's not his thing. Not his thing. And I understand what you're saying here. I do think there was a little bit of an element of when things went bad with the defense. For example, this year, I mean, every good defense or every team that had a good offense that they played lit up their defense. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, they gave up 30 plus points to Oklahoma. Iowa State.
Ran all
there was a little bit of a, hey, defense isn't my thing, so this isn't my fault.
Okay, but as a head coach, how do you get away with that? Because it doesn't matter if you're the quarterback.
Well, but did he get away with it? I mean, he's gone.
Valid point. And is anybody willing to do that again? You know, if you're the guy that's coming in and saying, hey, look, give me the offense, y'all go do the rest. Is anybody else really willing to do that? I mean, obviously, Houston's done that.
Okay, there's a couple of things here. First of all, for Dana Holgerson, West Virginia was his first head coaching job.
Yes.
So he was basically learning on the spot to how to be a head coach as opposed to be an offensive coordinator. A lot of the candidates that West Virginia is looking at now are experienced head coaches. They've overseen a program as a CEO, overseeing the offense and the defense. So we'll see what happens. And here's the other thing. The next coach, I think, will probably win the press conference better.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, you can say whatever you want to say after a game, but the proof is in the pudding. It's how you perform on the field.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. If Holgerson was the worst PR expert going, nobody'd care if he won a bunch of games.
Right, that's true too. And you made a valid point. Like, I know just coming out of football and coaching at the D2 level, West Virginia State, I've said to everybody that will listen, like if I had a chance to get back into coaching, it'd be a defensive back job or something like that. Because it is a major issue even at the Division II level of trying to manage not just the defense or the offense or special teams, but it's the grades, it's the students, it's all of that. And if you don't know that, you just walk into that, it is a challenge.
Well, sure it is.
You know, I did it for 10 years, and I still, at year 10, I probably thought maybe I got a quarter of this down.
Well, that's really true. I mean, that happens in a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, suddenly it's like, who's lining the field? You're lining the field, coach.
Exactly.
It's Division II.
Yeah.
You're lining the
Who's
field.
putting the equipment up?
That's right.
That's me.
That's right.
Well, listen, you made a perfect segue, the next coach. Now, we've heard all kinds of names, right? Right now they say the front runner is Neil Brown from Troy, but you've got names like Les Feckel, Butch Jones, Rich Rodriguez, which just threw me for a loop. You got Mike Novus, Jason Candle, Seth Luttrell, and Bill Clark, and you've got all these names surfacing for this West Virginia job. And again, Brown seems to be the front runner, but I've heard, I can't say how reliable it is, but I've heard that Gordon Gee has gotten involved in the process because he's a Les Feckel guy.
Luke Fickle, you mean?
Luke Fickle. Yeah. What did I say?
Les Feckel.
Luke Fickle.
And that was ringing the bell to me because I remember Les.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I think both of those guys who are the perceived front runners, I mean, who really knows, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say definitively who their top candidates are. We do know this, and I don't really like to get in too deep into sources, but at this point, I mean, Dana Holgerson at the time of this taping just officially accepted the Houston job today. So these candidates, Brown and Fickle, neither one of these guys have officially even been interviewed yet. So we'll see what happens there. But I think they're both good candidates.
How many names will get thrown out even before they get asked? Like, how many of these names, you know, just again, because like you said, this kind of took place today, and we already have a handful of names already. Some of these, like, who has contacted who to be able to even say anybody's there?
The other thing is, we have no idea what coaches have tried to make contact through back channels at West Virginia.
Right.
I mean, you could be talking about a couple of NFL assistants. You could be talking about a couple of guys who retired. But the tea leaves say that Brown and Fickle are the leading candidates. They've both been head coaches. They both had a lot of success this year. I mean, Fickle, defensive-minded guy. He's been involved in a big-time program at Ohio State. He won 11 games this year. They just won their bowl game against Virginia Tech. West Virginia's been a program that's really been kind of devoid of really great defense. His stock and trade is defense. On the flip side, you got Neil Brown from Troy. You know, he took over a situation at Troy for Larry Blakeney, who basically took that program from D2 all the way to FBS. In the last 3 years, they've won 10 games. You know, as far as the least shock to the system for the West Virginia fan base, I think they'd be more willing to accept Brown because he's an air raid coach.
Yeah.
He played wide receiver for Hal Mumme. He walked on at Kentucky. He's got a little bit of a track record as an offensive coordinator. But we'll wait and see. They'll evaluate it. I think they're both good candidates.
Isn't Fickle the big name because he's an Ohio State guy, right?
Yeah.
Gee, obviously, he was the president there not really that long ago.
No, that's exactly right. And here's the other thing, too. You know, Gee has a reputation, a well-earned reputation, of being involved in sports. He's been very active in the Big 12. He was very active with football when he was at Ohio State. At Vanderbilt, too. So, you know, to think that he wouldn't have a heavy impact in this decision, I think is kind of short-sighted. He's going to be all over it. On the other hand, I mean, Shane Lyons was basically hired to make this call, okay? Yeah. This is really, fair or not, this decision on the new football coach at West Virginia is going to go a long way into the way we perceive him for years.
All right, well, let's take another quick commercial break. Again, you can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Apple, iTunes, and our website at WVSportsConnection.com. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
You can do and you can say anything you want. Live your life and I'll live mine any way I want. You can have and you can take anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want. Anything you want. And I want. You can do and you can say anything you want. But everything that you do, make it what you want.
This isn't just a beer. It's a lager. A medium-bodied, amber-colored, one-of-a-kind beer. Made from those bold enough to brew it, for those bold enough to drink it. Tap into your inner eagle. Yingling Traditional Lager. Spread your wings.
It's football season again, and Tony the Tailor has the perfect sportswear, outerwear, and footwear. Johnny O quarter zips and sport shirts, Bill's khakis, and boots from Allen Edmonds are what the smart people are wearing this season for game time and play time. We have a great selection in our downtown Charleston store, or shop at our new downtown Huntington location. Can't make it in? Shop online at bestmastertailor.com. Tony the Tailor, West Virginia's finest men's store.
West Virginia Sports Connection is brought to you by Subway, Development of West Virginia, Greg Hammond. With promotional consideration from Spriggs Distributing Company, Yingling Golden Pilsner, Hendrickson and Long, The Riggs Corporation, Commercial Real Estate, Paul M. Corey, CPA.
Welcome back to West Virginia Sports Connection. When we went out, we were talking about, well, actually, you had a question for Dave.
Yeah, I wanted, because I'm interested in the defense, because, all these years now we've heard conversation around offensive play. Throwing the ball, but at the end of the day, we all know that defense wins championships. And I'm wondering if WVU does consider looking at a defensive guy simply because the way they've lost some of these games, 40 to 50 is not, that's not really playing defense. I could see the focus really now changing from we're tired of that offensive stuff. Let's go to defense and be a hard-nosed team. What's your take on that?
Well, that makes a lot of sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do that because fans love offense, okay? Fans love offense. They want to see the ball thrown around. It's all about the quarterback. But I agree with you. I don't really think West Virginia is going where they think they need to go until they turn the defense up.
Tony Gibson has, I've heard rumblings Tony Gibson has an outside shot. Now, in years past, his defense has been pretty good. This year, obviously not so much, but does he have a legitimate shot? I
don't think so. I think in the right scenario, Gibson probably stays with West Virginia as a defensive coordinator. Here's the thing, though. If you hire a coach like Luke Fickell, he's going to bring his own defense in because that's his bailiwick. So if he's the coach, I think we'd see the end of the 3-3-5, and they'd probably go to another defense. But here's the thing about that, and this always gets me when coaches get pigeonholed. You think, wow, this coach can only coach this one particular scheme.
Right.
If West Virginia decided to go away from a 3-3-5, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tony Gibson can't exist in that. He can just adjust to it. He's coached other defenses. It's just his bailiwick now is the 3-3-5. Yeah,
and that's a great point because I think Gibby is like a really good coach. I think he's a player's coach along with that. I've just not been sold on a 3-3-5 because to me it forces what they call hybrid guys to do, hybrid guys they don't want to face hard-nosed running teams. Hybrid guys also don't do well in teams that are going to throw the ball a lot.
That's true.
Because he's a hybrid, and he's good at both things, but not great at either one of them. And so to me, I don't see how the 3-3-5 can continue no matter who comes in. I think that defense has to change.
Well, one other thing about the 3-3-5, and one of the reasons that West Virginia runs it is because if you notice, all the great defensive linemen end up in the SEC. They end up at the bigger schools.
I said that today.
But there's no reason that West Virginia, if they change their defensive philosophy, can't recruit more defensive linemen. I mean, they're in the Big 12 now. They ought to be able to attract more down linemen and get away from that 3-3-5, if that's what they choose to do. The other thing about Gibson is, one thing I've really liked that's come out lately is how many of the players on West Virginia, particularly the defensive players, have thrown their support behind Gibson on social media. You know, that tells me two things: that he's really popular amongst his players, and that's good. But the other thing is, players don't want to change. Okay,
That's
I mean,
true,
suddenly
too.
you're in a
That's a valid
situation where a new coach is going to be coming in. It's like, well, here's the guy who recruited me. Here's the scheme I'm in. I'm comfortable. I've worked my way up into playing time. And now you're telling me I got to impress an entirely new guy. Nobody likes change, and that might be part of it.
And that's that part right there, Dave, is probably the biggest piece. And again, as a player, I realize, like, every time you start talking about the head coach is gone or is leaving, you're like, okay, I might be happy he's leaving, but who's coming in?
Yeah.
Because that person has no loyalty to you whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I could understand exactly what you're saying. Players who are there, you know, who love Gibby, they're all about him. He's familiar to us. We don't want something that we don't know.
Yeah, if you've been in a system for 2 or 3 years and then suddenly, you know, it's your sophomore or your junior year and you really don't want to transfer and you're kind of committed to this new coach, you know, it's tough. You want to stay with your position coach. Here's the thing too. When you decide what college you're going to, it's really great to say, wow, I really like school X because of the academics or how close it is to home, or I really like the head coach. But Carl, you know this. Most of the time, a kid commits to a school because he's recruited by his position coach. That's really his surrogate dad when he's at school. And the idea that that guy's going to be gone, it's a shock to the system.
Yes.
How tough was that for you when you were playing? And you had a couple coaching changes.
When I got to Minnesota, you know, again, I can't really throw the name out, but my defensive back coach, he didn't like, you know, he made it very clear. He did not like small college defensive backs. He felt like you couldn't handle the receivers that, you know, were in these big colleges. So he treated me like he was uninterested in me. And then after he left, then I go to Pete Carroll, who was probably one of the player-friendliest coaches I've ever played with my entire life, who was just interested in the details of doing what you're supposed to do. Then I go to Willie Shaw, you know, who's a great defensive back, who taught defensive back through life skills, believe it or not. So I was very fortunate to have some really good defensive back coaches, and then Coach Pruitt was my defensive back coach in college. So I've been very fortunate, but I've seen positions where guys have coaches who they talk about them like constantly. They hate them. You know, they literally hate him, and you can't play well until you get that guy that's worth playing for. So I can imagine these guys on defense being absolutely petrified about what's happening next.
Carroll, Shaw, and Pruitt, those are some heavy-duty names.
Those are great names. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you were very fortunate in that.
You know,
except for the one guy whose name you won't throw out.
Yeah, yes, and I had my first defensive back coach at Marshall was a nightmare as well. And so, but I've been very, very fortunate to have great ones and can contribute them to my success for sure.
So let's flip back. You know what? They're giving me this signal again. So listen, thank you for watching West Virginia Sports Connection. Dave, you going to come back?
Whenever you say, Tracy.
I'd love
anytime,
for you to come
man.
back, man. It's been a pleasure, and thanks a lot for coming on. Again, you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on our website at WVSportsConnection.com, and on Apple iTunes. We're all over the place. Check us out. Thanks for watching.